When people look at my work, there are certain things they cue in on, and certain people cue in on different things. Everybody's staring at my sculptures. I'm staring at the people because I like to see what's going on in their head, and they reveal a lot more of how they think and what they're looking at by their reactions and how they talk with other people about it.
My art, what is it? I look at it as kind of a window into the Industrial Revolution. They're kind of technical studies for these things that you really don't get to go out and see anymore.
When I think it was 14, I spent the summer out at an uncle's place out on the border of North Dakota and Montana. A small farm he had, and we were miles and miles away from anything. And I really appreciated that when people needed something, they would just make it. Looking at my sculptures now, a lot of that refers back to then. I've got these rusty metal panels. If we wanted to make something, we would take boards off that came off an old fence someplace, or an old building or something like that. Rust and stuff didn't matter, but it showed the character of the piece. I really cued in on that. And then a lot of my stuff is, the panels and stuff on it are wired on with like a baling wire. And we use that a lot just to hook stuff together. And I really like looking at something and saying, somebody made that. I'm a full-time kinetic sculptor. I've been doing it for 18 years now, I think. When I construct the pieces, I will just start building from the top down. Now it's pretty much just intuition. I've done it long enough. It's kind of like learning a language. I just know what the ball will do. But when I started doing it, would be I'd build part of it and then run the ball down a few times, see if it would work, and then go to the next part and just keep working it that way. Drawing it all out ahead of time doesn't work very good because something will be off and you can't put the physics into the drawing. The downside of it is I don't know exactly what I'm going to end up with when I start, but that's also part of the fun. It reveals itself as I'm working. A little over 2 years ago, my son joined me in the studio, and it's been a lot of fun to have him here. He's got his own work, but we share a studio.
Working with my dad is interesting. You know, if you would have told me I would be doing this as a kid, I would have told you were crazy. It took me years until I was in probably high school to realize that this isn't a normal life. And that's when I started realizing how really cool and fortunate I was.
This lifestyle actually has a lot of positives to it. As a dad, I was at home all the time and working with my son, and he's going to be a dad soon, and I think it'll probably be the same for him.
We have this dynamic that I don't think a lot of other people or artists even get to have. We even have this kind of almost like a game, where it's, you know, you get that spark of imagination, that the initial idea, that light bulb over your head, and you're just like, come here, come here, come here. All right, and you explain it all, and you set up with like bits to stand in for other bits and to convey your idea, and you're just like, cool or lame? Because there's such a fine line between something that's really going to be cool and captivating and something that's kind of hokey and lame. And you always kind of tend to be right on that edge. And it's just, you know, he thinks like I do, I think like he does. It's something that I honestly don't think we could have the dynamic with anybody else. You know, when I first started thinking about doing art as a career, in the discussions that we had for these months and weeks and all this over this period of time, he just off the cuff, one of those little tiny comments that usually you make and nobody pays any attention to. He says, you could make art out of gears. And I just grabbed that and I said, that's it. And I took it and I ran with it because I had always been fascinated with the old machinery and how they moved and the designs and the patterns in the spokes of the gears and the wheels and the flywheels. And I'd always been around steam engines and old farm engines, and it was just, that was it. That was the spark that set this whole thing in motion. I really don't know why history is specifically important to me, but it is something I'm very passionate about. I've always, as a kid, I always loved antique stores. I always loved history museums. I always loved art museums. And it was an appreciation for what came before us and that everything is built on top of something else. Our cell phones couldn't have happened without the transistor radio, and that couldn't have happened without the machines that made the early transistor radios. And those weren't electronic. Before there were motors, it was all belt-driven and water-driven and steam-driven. It's just how everything builds on top of it, and we tend to forget where things come from. And with my degree in archaeology, it's really interesting to know you can gain massive amounts of information from little bits. And by compiling those little bits, you can gain more. And that's kind of some of the approach I take to my sculptures. The patterns that you see in the gears and the spokes, they're all based off of original designs from the Industrial Revolution. I have odd-shaped gears that I use that are square and spirals. And, these patterns, people think that I come up with them, but these designs were conceived from, before the Civil War to just do a specific function, to speed up and slow down, and things that we would program a machine or a computer to do now. I know why spokes are shaped the way they are, and it's not just always ornamental. There's so much history to make something that you can take it for granted. History is just something that we all share.
Most of the stuff that I do in my sculptures, I have one electric motor. I don't put any other electronics on it. And a lot of times people, you should put sounds and bells and lights and things like that. What I've found is if you add more electronics to it, people actually dismiss it as something as electronic. There's more engineering in a $3 calculator than there is in one of my sculptures. But a calculator you throw in the drawer and don't think about it. Probably the most notable thing of that was I did a piece for Disney's Epcot, and it was set up right next door to the robotics lab. You come out of the robotics lab, and there was my sculpture. I talked to the engineers there, and they said it's just amazing. People walk right through the robotics lab, and the robotics lab had amazing engineering, but it was this black box syndrome. They think, it's electronic, and they just walk by it, and they'd come out and just stop dead at my sculptures. And it was like, what's with this? And it's because they can look at it and kind of tell what it's going to do and how it works, and it holds people's fascination. So people actually have almost a need to see those things that work, and it explains the world around them. One of the most favorite things that people see is the jump. I do something and a ball flies through the air. Physics says it's going to land there every time. People are interested in it because it's not on the track at that point. It's like it's risky. It's not really risky, but that's what they think of.
One of the best things I love is that I'll go to an arts festival and you'll see a couple there, and it's a man and a woman, and the woman is there looking at everything, all the art, the paintings, the sculptures, and you get this husband who's wearing his sunglasses, and you can tell by his body language he just doesn't want to be there. He'd rather be watching football, and he's going, he's not even looking in the booths they're walking past. He just keeps his eyes forward, kind of slowly going the same speed she does, and they'll get to my booth and he'll just stop dead, and she'll walk in and he'll turn his head sideways, and then he goes and he lifts his sunglasses up, and it's just like, yes, I got ya. And I love it, making art so that it's not just, people can understand it, they can get to it. Art's about feeling, and I can change how somebody feels. I can instill that sense of wonder into them. My father's in an interesting place in his career where he has been slowly building on what he's done before and has slowly evolved over time into a point where he's very comfortable and he feels it's his mature body of work. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what direction I want. There are things I like, things I don't like, things I've thought of that I don't know how to convey yet, and things I want to try. You know, when I first started, you know, just getting a gear to spin smoothly and evenly without a horrible wobble was a huge feat. And now that I'm able to, you know, perfect that and able to reproduce that steadily, you know, I can start working on other things. I'm not sure where I exactly see my art going. I'd like to do some larger scale stuff. My equipment can do up to a 4-foot gear in one piece. I would love to see a science museum or something where I could just do an entire wall where I can talk about the history of the patterns and where things came from. I would love to see it to be more accessible in things like museums and airports and malls. But I also do like making the small stuff that's for houses and residents and offices and waiting rooms. My goal is to be a professional artist, to do this as a career, to you know, provide for my family and to enjoy the journey. I mean, that's the interesting thing about art, is it's not like a corporate job or a retail job where you can continually climb the ladder because you know what the ladder is. Well, with art, you don't know what the ladder is and you don't necessarily know where you're going. But it's about the journey. It's like getting off the interstate and just seeing where the road takes you, and it's part of the fun.
I am having the time of my life. I feel like I am the luckiest person alive. I do what I do. I basically play for a living, and people are clamoring to buy it, to pay me to play. It's amazing. Getting into doing this, I didn't really know where I was going or even why I was doing it. As I've worked over the years, I've kind of discovered a lot of stuff about myself, the way I think and the way I act, and it all fits into that whole system thing. Yeah, I'm just really lucky.